Hello there and welcome to the No Script Show. This video is a follow-up to our podcast episode called Don't Quote Us on This, where we looked at some of the confusion there is when it comes to writing semantic HTML for testimonials, pull quotes, and regular article quotes. You can find that at noscript.show/24, so the numerals 24, and it's worth checking that out before watching this. Here, though, we're quickly looking at various approaches to styling these things with CSS. And as always, David Walmsley joins me over there with a lovely shirt today. So very nice. Shall I put the screen on and crack on?
Yeah, let's do that, because this one will be quick.
Okay.
Because I haven't had the time to actually, do many variations of the styles on the things that we were talking about. But
Sure.
I've got some things to point out. So I think when it comes to testimonials, which we talked about first time, it seems pretty common to me to see those put in carousels of some form or another. And obviously, with us being a no script show, there's reasons why we want to avoid things that require JavaScript if we can. So we're looking for sort of simpler resilient options. So there are a couple here that I thought I'd mention. And the first one is what is called the reel by Hayden Pickering, he's getting a mention again, and Andy Bell in their every layout. And I use this on our site anyway, but I think it's a really good solution. So if we go to their site, we'll see it's been employed over here. So you just put the testimonials in this.
Nice.
And
looks nice.
So you can find it. Unfortunately, the reel is under their premium thing. But if you want to see how it works, you can just go to the No Script Show and look at how we're using it. On the front
Okay,
end,
there you go.
yeah. Yeah. So if you can see, the reel is effectively here. So you can get the gist of how that is put together. It's horizontal scrolling. So that's one approach, I guess, instead of having a carousel when you've got a lot and you don't want to take up too much of the vertical space. And another one, which I should have brought it up, actually. I will just show it here in effect. So I've done a little demo, which we'll use at some point. Let me just go to it, showing some reviews. So I've laid these out, but another way, which I needed to use, was to just use the thing that which we talked about, the sort of
details.
Details and summary, correct. Yes. And I've got that as an example. And in fact, I'm combining two things which are on our intrinsic framework. I'm combining this thing of setting a maximum column. So I've got the sort of CSS here where we can just set these up, how many we want. And then it creates this sort of, if I can resize, this sort of situation, but it doesn't go beyond 3 or whatever we set it. To put that inside the same thing, let me just go back to our homepage where I can see it. And we've moved on since then. Let me have a look for the disclosure widget. So yes, so I'm just using the same disclosure widget there, but I'm sticking that RAM technique, those grids within that. I think that works quite well. I did it on a website. In fact, I can just bring it up if I can just search for this Affinity Center.
Yeah, you've got the URL there.
Yeah, if I just go into their couple, it was a problem that I had. I don't think the markup is good as I have here, but we had all these different sort of reviews which he collected, and he collected so many, and they were in this carousel. And I never realized until I had to remake the site how many there were, and you can sort of see.
Wow, a lot.
Yeah. So I thought, well, that was the best way to deal with that. So yeah.
So you push them into a container there, which has a maximum of whatever it is, 6 or something like that. Yeah.
Yes, on this case, and then they just, and it's quite nice because responsively, then it will just adjust.
Yeah.
And I think these are better. I don't know what you feel about them. I now kind of hate it when I see a carousel for reviews.
I think the beauty of the details block is that everything is definitively hidden until you touch the details. You invoke the detail, you open it. In fact, you open the accordion, and then it's all available. Whereas the carousel is somewhat available, and you have to interact on an ongoing basis. So you have to continue to scroll and then scroll a bit more and then scroll a bit more and then scroll a bit more. If that works with your finger, that kind of almost feels like on a mobile device, that kind of sweepy. There's
Yeah.
something quite good about that because we're used to that with all the applications. But I think on a desktop, your implementation with the details is better because it's kind of all on, all off. You toggle them all on, you toggle them all off. If you were to have, let's say that you had 50 on that page you just showed us, that scroll bar is going to be tiny. Maybe it's not 50, but it's
Yes.
I mean, it's probably not far off, is it?
That on this though, I didn't do. So if we look at this one, if I go back to the that one that I was doing, I limited the space.
Yeah, okay. So you carried on with the scroll there. Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
there's options. There's options. I actually quite like what you did where you opened it all and then you had that big close button at the end. That seemed to work for me. Yeah.
I think
but I'm not a fan of the carousel either. Basically, I think it's kind of had its day. It was interesting, but not.
Yeah, and I think this is why they argue on every layout, and that you'll notice on websites that either of these guys have done, that they tend to employ the reel quite a lot for their stuff, because on a mobile, you can do it with your finger, so it does scroll along quite nicely. So anyway, I mean, it's just a solution to avoid having to get into JavaScript until, I mean, the hope is, because we had that initial excitement about Google managing to put forward some new HTML that would give us carousels.
Except it didn't.
Well, it didn't.
Did.
The thing is, they called it accessible, and then there was Susan Suadan who did some real experiments on it and said, no, actually, it's not. So it's still ongoing.
It's ongoing, right? It's not. It's a work in progress. It's not finished.
Yeah, exactly. So that might get changed over the time. I mean, I'll just let's just go over. I did do on our intrinsic framework. I did mock up, if anyone wants, the sort of way I've coded this up with these example testimonial here. I'll probably keep adding to these. So I've put in the HTML, which we were talking about, in the way that we would do it now, given what we learned in the first part of this. And then here, there's not much to say on it. So basically, if we look at this, so how it works is that we start mobile first. So we just sort of set those up and then have them go into the grid past a certain point into the 3, which is not that difficult for anyone to set up. There were a couple of things here that I put in the code, which I thought were quite interesting and new. One was, and people who are watching the show won't get it, but you had an accessibility expert look at our site, didn't you? For your
Joe Dolson,
Joel Dolson. And although I saw it, he reminded me how we could use it. So I'm using it here to put in this sort of CSS generated content here, and then escape it from screen readers by just putting in a blank, which is new CSS alt that we can have with this.
Yeah, so that was novel, wasn't it? Yeah. So you had to have a blank for it to work. So in effect, you kind of think it not being there would be superior, but having a container with nothing in it was in fact what you needed to do, which is curious.
Yeah, so I mean, I was able to just put this with the little stars, just so it's decorative. It
looks nice.
Anything at all. Yeah, but you can do it, and we can now do it with generated content without having that read out to screen readers, which is quite nice. The other thing that was just employed on there, which is worth, as I say, we use a media query then to bring in the grids, and I've just put 3 columns on this one. It could be anything. And then the other thing that I've put in there, when it does get to that, I wanted to use subgrid to make sure that whatever size of the quote is here, that the people and their details line up.
They all stay the same, they all line in at the bottom,
Yeah, it's in a subgrid related to that. But that's it, really. There's lots of different ways. Yeah, it's just a simple thing, but it's a good starting point when we do our projects or something to say, oh, that's how I coded it up before.
Just to say, obviously, I'm putting the URL on the screen. If you want to get this, if you want to be able to see where this code is, you can obviously look in the URL bar on our screen, but head to noscript.show/learn/15 number 15, And the links, as you can see on the screen, are right there. Just click on them and you'll be able to get to all of these bits and pieces. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's good. So I think that just covers testimonials. So let's go back to pull quotes again. Something which I think maybe ever used once in my career, if I
Do
can
you know
call it
what?
a
When
career.
you see them in a printed magazine, which we
Yeah.
can now see on the screen, so we're looking at, I don't know, maybe it's some magazine, Vanity Fair or National Geographic or whatever it may be.
Mm.
There, man, is it effective. It's like
Mm,
super effective, especially as you've got this columned layout of text. Like it just jumps at you. I mean, it really stands out.
yeah.
Typically, on the web, we're never going to employ 3 columns of text like that. So I think the opportunity to make it stand out quite as effectively as that is less. But there, it's profound. I mean, it's like it's the first thing you're going to look at. You can't escape it. It's brilliant.
Yeah, no, design-wise, and you can understand why people love these pull quotes because, a lot of the designers who've gone to the web started in print, didn't they? And they kind of want this. So in contradiction to what we was talking about in the first part with Jeremy Keith's argument, why do we have these on the web? They don't suit the web at all, because of the duplicate content annoying people because screen readers can't understand it. And then we have the technical difficulties of making these work on all screens. And there's good reasons not to have pull quotes. But interestingly, just recently, it was released actually on YouTube. So you can actually watch the talk by Rachel Andrews for the CSS Day 2025. And so later in there, I've actually linked to the timestamp where she shows this. And she talks a lot. She's talking about multicolumn, which I use quite a lot, this way of being able to just automatically generate columns. And she's working on the spec of that.
Uh-huh.
And one of the big problems she has is multicol and fragmentation. Fragmentation is about how you control what automatically gets shifted over to the next row.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's mainly what it talks about. But she also talks about the idea of exclusion. So it's not there in HTML, but she's asking the basic question, how much do we need it? Because with exclusions, the idea that you could exclude something from the normal flow
Right.
within this rather than a sort of fragmentation that's
Yeah.
excluded from the normal flow, everything can go around it. And of course, when you think about it, that's exactly what we would want for sort of things like pull quotes like this,
Yeah.
You could-
So does it sit somewhere else then? Like, can you, in this idea, would you specify it would belong at the end, or would it just disappear entirely? If you know what I mean. So it'd be presentationally, it'd be there, but you wouldn't be able to see it, for example, on a screen reader. It would just evaporate.
Yeah, well, I don't know the answer to this.
Yeah.
I think if there's a demand for it, they'll start to look into how they can implement this. So the implementations are known at the moment, but while she's looking at it, how much do we want these kind of design patterns? And she does make a point, updating, because generally, and she would be part of that group, we've generally said, look, the web isn't like print,
No.
forget that. But as
Yeah.
she started to look at fragmentation, she started to look at how you might fragment these things, particularly some people still want to print the web. And in fact, you can print our articles actually, because I put the code in for that. She's thinking that you now can sort of fragment stuff. So things go into pages. So if we want, the web can behave a little bit more like print,
Yeah. And honestly, so, okay, this is a curious aside. For the first time in probably 15 years, I subscribed to a magazine last week and it arrived, and uh, I just loved it because the way it was presented and the way it was laid out was just so alien to me. And I did that curious thing where I forgot, and I literally tried to pinch and zoom on a bit of text, and then
Yes.
I laughed at myself as I did it. But it was so pleasurable to see quirky layouts that
Yes.
obviously at the moment we've pushed against that. It's like we just want this one column. Well, why do we want this one column? I mean, increasingly, we obviously on a mobile that would be desirable, but on a big screen, which many of us have got the privilege of having, something quirky would be interesting. Columned layouts, why not?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
fascinating, and it's artistic as much as anything
Yes.
else. It lends some sort of, okay, they're credible, they're artistic, this is what they do. Vanity Fair or something, or Vogue or whatever, something like that would really be able to lean into that, wouldn't they? Because that's their whole thing, is
Yeah.
creativity and artistry and all of that. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I mean, I would trust Rachel Andrews if she was behind the spec on it. Obviously, that's one of her jobs, as she says, because no one else wanted it. Because Multicols has been around for quite some time left there, and
But
she's now
nobody
working.
uses them, right? I mean,
Well, I do,
do
quite a
you?
lot
Okay,
now.
you
Yeah,
use them. Okay.
but that's where, I mean, the spec isn't as it should be, because there's been lots of ideas, and that's around fragmentation, about the fact that, when you put something into Multicol, then you have to control what is falling as you change your screen sizes, and
Yeah.
sometimes that can be awkward. So that's the fragmentation side, but it does lead on to the question, and the same also, it links into what she's done with grid and the future spec of grid, where now we can, with CSS, we can kind of control
Right.
how things are read out to
Right.
screen readers
Right.
when our design patterns are going all over the place. So
the browser can intelligently apportion the 3,000 words of text into manageable 3-column layouts in a grid or something like that.
yes, but it's more about just with our layouts. Well, the problem is, if we put something left and right or something, and it falls underneath, but it falls the other way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's got to be able to. It's got to read the DOM order, but the DOM order is going to need to change with the CSS that's moving that around visually. So that's coming into grid. So I imagine within this, I guess she's thinking ahead. I mean, at the moment, it's just at the stage of, do we want this? Is there a big demand for this? Because obviously there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of convincing the browsers to get on board with how to solve this.
It's an interesting kind of reversal of the last 10 years of the internet, it feels like, but it's nice. I think it's it's quite refreshing.
Yes. So I think, yes, really interesting. I think that's anyway, there's just that. But in terms of pull quotes, because they are quite difficult to do, I've done a little cheat which I think works, because we use on the no script show. In fact, I can even do this probably if I just put the inspect on here. It might just show it quite easily. We are, as you can see here, probably just about, we can see the line. So I can have content, as I'm in fact showing here, it's breaking it out of the main body without having to open up a new div. So I thought the next thing, and I did it here, let me just bring this up, just on that demo thing, you could use the same.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so it's a pretty easy thing. We would use that as standard to do that there, and then I did another one. So
that's nice. I really like that.
Yeah, so it looks okay as it moves to whatever size you've got, because it starts to move a little bit in until it's just
a regular old heading, it looks like, almost, doesn't it?
Yeah, and these name line things are easy. And I just did another one. Which one did I open? Let's have a look at this one. This is a bit more awkward, because then I've had to put flex, and I've had to put the text. So this is what is that sort of pop out size, and then I've had to put
that's a curious demonstration of limitations, because you really want the text to sort of wrap, and I suppose it suddenly works, but on do you know what, it's not that janky, but I can see why it might annoy your aesthetics.
Well, it might, because a lot of the pull quotes here are often lined up this side, and I would have to do a lot of work to do that, and I'm
and then if it was non-left aligned for a left to right reader, that would be a faux pas, wouldn't it? Okay.
For anybody who doesn't know about, I think we've mentioned it before, if you want to make these 9 named grid lines for your pages, then there's a great generator over here that allows you to do that. So the link is in our show notes, so you can just set up your own grid lines.
Yeah.
Once you've got the code for this, it's complex code. Once you've got the code for this, you can just change the numbers you want.
Is that going to be in the show notes as well? Will that be?
Yeah, the link to this generator, and we're using it all the time. It's on our site as well, so you can again just look at the code there. But I thought it does allow for that. Okay, we were going to do this quickly. I think that's all I needed to cover there. And then for regular quotes, well, luckily, just as I was in this thinking that, I need to do some styling to show, then the lovely Andy Clark
came to the rescue.
Yeah, exactly, with the CSS tricks article. So we'll have a look at that. And it seems like a good starting point. He, in this article, which I won't go into, just gives a whole load of code for styling these different block quotes.
Nice.
It's Andy Clark, so they're always beautiful, as always. And that's really what I want to
They're
show.
brilliant as well, some of them, aren't they? I mean, I'm particularly
Yes.
drawn to these much more straightforward ones where it's just some sort of separator at the top and the bottom. I kind of
Yes.
like that. Not quite so into the, I don't know, the icons at top and bottom and the surrounding it with a speech bubble or something. That's less for me, but they're
Yes.
beautiful. You're right. They're very, they're quite nice actually. Now that I've said that, I quite like those.
The one thing, though, I will notice here, it
Ooh,
shows this little. So we see this sort of really beautiful pull screen on his
yeah,
example here. What he doesn't provide us with, maybe there'll be an article following this up because he's been using this demo
yeah,
site for different articles. But I'd love to know if he's actually turned that into code and how he's done that.
yeah,
And I suppose it's similar to what I've been showing there, but I would like
yes,
to see how he goes about it.
yeah. That's
If he's
interesting.
But it's not there in the article. But otherwise, it's a good starting point, I think, to pick up some CSS to start with this. And yeah,
So this is on csstricks.com. Again, the link will be in the show notes.
yeah,
There's the URL, noscript.show/learn/1515.
yes.
There we go.
And I think I've lost my notes, but I
Yeah,
think that
right.
actually
Where's
takes us to
it
the
all
end.
gone? Yeah, we're at the end.
We are at the end, actually. If I just go back here, let's just check my notes. Yeah, we're done.
We're done. Okay. In that case, I will take your screen away and we'll just mention one more time where you can go and find it. The piece of content which came before this, so if you're curious about what we spoke about and the trials and tribulations from a kind of a technical point of view, but it's all speech. That didn't work. There we go. noscript.show/2424. That's the preamble to this episode, if you like. And obviously, if you want the show notes there, you can find them. But if you want the bits and pieces for this one, noscript.show/learn/1515. So there we go. That's it. We will see you next time, David. Thanks so much for your hard work riding on your coattails.
Thanks a lot. All right. See you
Take
next
it
time.
easy. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.